Comedy Centric. We're comedians and best friends, Julia Scotti and Kathy Caldwell. And we are back for season 2. Join us for all new episodes as we catch up with fascinating comics, writers, performers, and entertainers from around the world. We'll also just kind of talk about stupid stuff and make fun of each other. But we'll have fun together. And really, that's what matters. So let's go. Here's your host, nationally headlining comedian, actress, writer, and resident crime fighter in her active adult community, Julia Scotti. Crime. How's the crime?
The crime is down in my neighborhood. Yeah.
That's because you're on the case, Julia Scotti.
That's right. This is our first show of the new year, isn't it?
I know. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Yay. What's going on with you?
Well, nothing. Just work and stuff. And how about you? I get my life's nothing. I get nothing. I'm boring.
You were going to ask me something that I did recently, and now I can't remember what it was because it was like all about 3 hours ago that we spoke. What was the thing you wanted to? I've been up to a lot of things. My play is getting produced for starting the casting next next month.
Who's playing me?
Casting call.
Who's playing me?
Huh?
Who's playing
Nobody's
me?
playing you. You're not in the play. You're not represented. So that's that. I worked New Year's Eve down in Cape May, which was great. We had a great time.
I heard. I got my text message blows up. A friend of mine. Hey, a friend of mine was at the show. They were in tears. Julia was doing something in Cape May. So I got.
Yeah, it was a great night. The only disturbing thing about it was, I shouldn't even tell you. I think I even mentioned about the store that I saw down there.
No.
Oh, we drive to the gig and we passed this actual store, and it was a Trump merchandise store. That's all they sold was Trump merch. I was like, wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's all weird right now, baby. It's all.
I know. Well, we're gonna
Greenland. We're taking over Canada.
Yeah, but we're not in the fire like our guest tonight is. I'm gonna get right to it because I want to get her. I'm so thrilled to have her tonight. You guys have been following me on Facebook. Bree Fram, Colonel Bree Fram, is an author. She's the editor of 2 books, With Honor and Integrity, Transgender Troops in Their Own Words, from the NYU Press. That was released in November of 2021. And its sequel, which is out now, With Valor and Visibility, the next chapter of transgender service in January 25. She's also the author of Forging Queer Leaders, How the LGBTQIA plus community creates impact from adversity, from Jessica Kingsley Publishers, and that was out in 2024. Colonel Bree Fram is an author, podcaster, keynote speaker, active duty colonel, and astronautical engineer in the U.S. Space Force. I don't know why she's on it with us.
I can't even spell astronautical.
Well, Colonel Fram also co-leads the
show.
Listen to that. Wait, there's look at the size of this girl. She co-leads the Department of the Air Force LGBTQ plus initiatives team, which is dedicated to eliminating barriers in the LGBTQ plus military service in the Air and Space Force. There's more. Bree is currently stationed at the Pentagon, where she develops the requirements for future space capabilities. Prior to recommissioning into the Space Force in 2021, she served 18 years in a wide variety of Air Force positions, including a research and development command position, an oversight role for all Air Force security cooperation activity with Iraq. In earlier assignments, Colonel Fram served in the Air Force Directorate of Strategic Plans. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds great. She was a legislative fellow at the U.S. Capitol on the staff of Congresswoman Madeleine Bordallo. She was deployed to Qatar and Iraq as part of our Operation Iraqi Freedom, and she came out publicly as transgender on the day the transgender ban in the military dropped in 2016. She transitioned while in a command position, and not like me who went away. And she served the reimposition of the transgender ban from 2019 to 2021. And she is currently one of the highest ranking transgender officers in our U.S. military, all branches. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored and proud to have Colonel Bree Fram as our guest tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. You didn't mention things like nerd and goofball, all the more fun stuff.
Oh my God, I was typing this afternoon. I go, my life is worthless. What have I done with my life? Look at this woman. She's amazing. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's fun to be here. And, if we can have some laughs, that is absolutely what I need in my life right now. And I think so many of us need just to be every day.
You're in the wrong place for that, Colonel. That's all I can tell you.
And Bree, please call me Bree. That would be fantastic.
Can I call you Bree?
Thank you. No, you can't.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll give you half the show. Halfway in, you can switch.
Oh, okay. What time is it? Okay.
It's good enough. Yeah.
Well,
so I
got here. My goodness. I don't know. Just amazing. Crazy. Go ahead, Julia.
All right. I know my coming out story was I came out to the country on national television, but that's nothing compared to what you did. You were already in a command position when you came out?
Well, I came out before I transitioned. And so my coming out story was in 2016 when the Secretary of Defense finally made the announcement that transgender people could serve openly. I was serving my first tour at the Pentagon at that time. And I thought about going down to the briefing room where he was giving the speech and trying to sneak my way in and be a fly on the wall. But instead, I waited at my desk and I watched on the closed circuit, television production channel that we had there. And when he was done, I had an email that I was going to send to all my colleagues in the office. And I had a post on Facebook coming out to the world. But I didn't know how my life was going to change. So even though I had prepared for this, I had written it, I hesitated. And eventually I got the courage to hit post, hit send, and then I ran away. I went and found the gym that's buried well underneath the Pentagon. I hopped on the elliptical machine, and I like to say I went nowhere faster than I've ever gone anywhere in my life. Because I was like, I have so much nervous energy. Am I going to burn the motor out on this machine? But when I went back to my office, as eventually I had to do, I sat down. My colleagues walked over to me one by one, shook my hand, and said, "It's an honor to serve with you." And I was absolutely floored. It was truly
oh my God,
incredible. I was near tears. I do acknowledge that. My privilege in being white, being perceived at the time as male, working with a bunch of nerds that do Air Force space things at the time. And I also had a track record of performance. But by and large, the reception that I got is the reception that transgender service members got in the vast majority of circumstances, because what were we there for? We were there to accomplish the mission. And in the military, if you look to your left, you look to your right, do you have my back? Yeah, great, then you're on my team. And that was truly incredible, though I will say it wasn't all roses. My wife lost friends and family over my coming out. Some people that she considered closest to her don't speak with her to this day. And so this euphoria mixed with tears.
Was there any knowns, or was this a complete, like, when you said you came out, was it just a drastic change, or take us through that a little bit?
So coming out, as anyone who's part of this community knows, is not a one-time event, but there are some big bangs that are bigger than others. Up to that point in my life, there were fewer people than I can count on one hand that knew I was trans. So this was like the big moment for me. I mean, it was my wife, my mom, and two other people that I had told for reasons to try and help them through something difficult up to that point. So this was like throwing the doors open. here I am. I'd been part of a community working towards this goal of open service, but still I had to hide it, because for me, had I let anything slip to anyone prior to that, particularly military related, I could have lost my job for something that had absolutely nothing to do with my ability to serve.
At the time I came out, I was teaching. I was a middle school teacher, and the same, on a much smaller scale, but the same thing faced me. I was living my year of transition prior to the surgical part, and I lived in dread fear of being outed by somebody. I mean, it was just I tell the story that I would sit with a student, but I would always sit by the door with the door open so everybody could see what we were doing, because there's always that cloud hanging over our head that we're all perverts and child molesters.
I had a moment a couple of years before I came out where I was called into work on a Saturday, and we work in a secure facility. And I took 2 steps into the building. It's like, oh no, I have my phone in my pocket, and we're not allowed to do that. So I went and turned my phone into security, and because they have to scan your phone and go through everything, make sure there were no intrusions or anything they want to look at. They have free access to that. And the whole time, my wife is so nervous. She's like, when are the men in the black helicopters going to come to our house, rope down, and drag you away in the middle of the night? And I'm like, that's not going to happen. But that phone did have pictures of me on there as me. And eventually I'm in my office, and someone comes in and says, can you be blackmailed over any of this? And I said, absolutely not. All right, pick up your phone on the way out today. But that fear is real, and it is palpable. And it is why so many of us who have to live that life in a closet, we can be good at what we do. We can be great at what we do, but we will never be the best we can be at what we do when you're living with that fear, you're living with all your energy dedicated to putting this shield up between you and the world.
And you mentioned that in your book, in the chapter that you sent us, the pens chapter, which I stopped typing because I couldn't put it down. It was that good. Yeah, it really was. But this is you're right. So with all the adversity, what keeps us going? What keeps us serving? Actually, it's what I should have said. And the things the biggest one, and I put it in all caps, is I care about the ideals embedded in the Constitution I swore an oath to defend. I gotta say, with what's going to be happening on the 20th, you still believe that, knowing what's in store for us?
I absolutely believe in my oath and what I took and what that represents and what this nation brought forth into the world, and the concept that we are imperfect, that we can be better, and that document was written in a way that enabled us to reach for better. That's what I believe in, and that we can and should continue to work for that more perfect union, that opportunity for everyone to achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you can pull in the Declaration of Independence a little bit too. But what I believe is so fundamentally enshrined there in the freedoms that we have. And I know there are people in my family, there are people in countless American families that fought and died for those freedoms. And it is my absolute pleasure to do what I can to pass those on to future generations that are going to make it better and help us get a little closer to the dream in that document.
So the question I have as a civilian, as a trans person, and for all the hundreds of thousands of trans people in this country, how much do we need to be afraid?
Of what?
Well, you without addressing the 800-pound gorilla in the White House, or soon to be, we're already. I'm all packed to go to the camps. How bad do you think it's going to be for us? And if you don't want to answer that question, that's fine.
Well, it's really hard to speculate on anything because that's what we would be doing right now. And I want to focus on, for all of us, control what we can control. Take care of the people around us. And the advice that I give to so many people that ask me, what should I do? What should I do now? And I'm like, well, first, don't make a decision out of fear. Do your planning. Understand what a worst case scenario for you might look like, and be prepared should that come about. So you know what you're going to do, so it's not a surprise. And if it's something less than that worst case scenario, great. Understand what that is to what you might do in those situations. But if you plan for the worst and fight for the best, that's, taking hold of our destiny. And that is doing what we can do to create the best outcome for ourselves and the people that we love.
God, I wish I could have voted for you. Go ahead, Kath.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, just to kind of take us back. So you've obviously been, when you were in school, did you know you wanted to go into the military this route and, and to serve this way?
No, I
Okay.
had no intention of going into the military when I was growing up. So the quick and dirty tale is that when I grew up, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I wanted to study dinosaurs, which my 16-year-old still does today. He's held on to it a little longer than I did. But when a friend of mine made me, literally dragged me kicking and screaming just about to watch an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation with him, I was like, I want to be Geordi. I want to make the warp engine go. I want to help humanity expand out into the stars. And what I probably saw and didn't realize it at the time was I also saw this culture that I wanted to be a part of, where everyone was valued for who they were and what they brought to it. So that was the moment that made me want to be an aerospace engineer. And so I went to school, got my degree, my first degree in aerospace engineering, and I graduated in 2001. So I started looking for jobs. I applied to NASA, a number of private companies, and we got attacked. And that was the next moment that changed my life. If your people are old enough to remember who are listening, you saw American flags just explode everywhere,
Yeah.
and this sense of ownership and this patriotism. And I knew I wanted to do something different. And within a few days, I was driving to see my then girlfriend, who is now my wife. And it was a 2-hour drive. And thank goodness I had done it enough to be able to put myself on autopilot, because I saw a flag hanging from an overpass about halfway there. I cried the rest of the way to her house. I walked in and I said, I'm going to join the Air Force.
Wow.
And that was 24 years ago. It took me about 18 months to prove I was healthy enough to get in, because I, like a mistake, didn't listen to my recruiter, who should have told me, say nothing. And it took a little while to prove that I didn't have childhood asthma. But eventually, now 22 years later, 22 years tomorrow of service is...
Happy anniversary, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you a million times. There's so much I want to ask you, but you told me on the phone last week that, or at least in the papers you sent me, that there are 15,000 transgender folks in all the services.
Yeah, that's an estimate. We don't have hard data. We have actually been prohibited from collecting data on that, because this is a legacy of don't ask, don't tell. And when lesbians, gays, and bisexuals were allowed to serve openly, there was a policy put in place that said that's private information, because we don't want anyone to know. So we haven't been able to gather this data and have to rely on surveys. 15,000 is a pretty reasonable estimate from a number of sources. Some say as high as 22,000. But any way you break it down, the Department of Defense is the largest employer of transgender people in the world. And we can look at historical data, and trans people have served at twice the rate of their cisgender counterparts in the United States military. So it's pretty amazing.
Just say that again. Say that again. So that
transgender people have served at twice the rate of their cisgender counterparts, according to data from the Veterans Affairs Department.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. And these are the facts. This is the data that will never get into the mainstream, that that shows the effectiveness, and that how you can serve, and none of it matters. We're just all who we are, doing a really good job. And it's mind-blowing, the hit job that they're doing on the trans community right now. It's just it's sickening.
What I always bring it back to is that the same arguments, the same tired, proven over and over again to be fallacious arguments, were used against every group that is integrated into the military. When we integrated with African Americans after World War II, when we brought women into the military in the 70s, when we brought lesbians, gays, and bisexuals into the military, when we put women in combat roles less than a decade ago, or right about a decade ago. And then when trans people were able to serve, every time it's the same thing. We were incapable. We were going to destroy unit morale. Healthcare costs would be too high. There would be so many problems that it was just completely infeasible. Every time proved false, yet recycled and used again. And we're seeing that now with transgender people.
Yeah.
Again.
You make a good point. One of the big bugaboos about trans people serving is that the expense of having us in the service is just so out of control. Everybody's going to be, and plus your kids are going to go to grammar school and come back, a different gender, la 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 la. And you point out that the expense of a woman getting pregnant, cis woman getting pregnant, far exceeds, the prenatal care and all that exceeds whatever we have to go through.
Yeah, the cost argument for medical reasons is something that just doesn't hold water. We are a tiny fraction of the medical costs of the Department of Defense. And no one joins the military to think, oh, right, I'm in it for trans healthcare. No, if you want
we go to prison for that. We go to prison for that.
There are plenty of employers that provide gender affirming care that you don't have to sign on the dotted line to pay up to and including the price of your life to receive healthcare. Healthcare is something that we provide to our service members to make sure that they are the most effective versions of themselves to do their mission, both here at home and on the battlefield. And trans healthcare is healthcare. So that is something that we make a deal with our service members to include. We will make you the best version of yourself and keep you the best version of yourself. And yes, the costs are absolutely minimal, and particularly if you compare that cost of what it costs for us on any given year versus what it would cost to replace us if you were to throw all of us out. And you're talking about factors of 100 or 1,000. You want to save that money? Great. You'll recoup your costs that you just had to bring all these new people in 2,000 years.
And the experience, you can't buy experience. You're going to get rid of 15,000 people. Great. And then suddenly we go to war, or we're attacked again. Where are those people?
The thought of losing 15,000 people, you don't just replace people in a modern military by giving them 2 weeks of training, put them a rifle in their hands and say, take that hill. It takes skill, it takes training, and in many cases, it takes years of dedication that we invest in our service members. We have a professional, all-volunteer force that is the envy of the world because of how we develop our service members. And when you look at the average trans service member, they're a senior non-commissioned officer with about 15 years of service. That is the backbone of our military. Those are the people training the new folks coming in, not the people that are just showing up and saying, hey, it's day one, let's get this thing started.
I want to get to your book, the new one, in this chapter you sent me about the pens. Can I read the Shaw quote first, and then?
Sure.
As I was reading, I didn't realize it was George Bernard Shaw. But
what was the name of your book? The first book again?
My first book was With Honor and Integrity. The second was Forging Queer Leaders, and the new one is With Valor and Visibility.
Okay, so this is
which is the sequel.
Okay.
Yeah. So the chapters, this chapter 2 is called The Pens, and she has this quote: "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used when I die. I love that line. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me. It's a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment and want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. That's George Bernard Shaw, but oh my God, that so applies to
It
all of our
resonates
service people.
so deeply with me that my job is to help that torch shine a little brighter and to pass it on to the person behind me, because that's what we do. It is my role as a leader in the military to train and develop the leaders that are going to follow me. And if I don't do that, I have failed. Even better, if I can blaze new trails so that the people following behind can make it to where I've made it to and have the energy to go further. That's what's amazing. And that's what I hope we're building with transgender service members, is that we've knocked down some of those barriers now with having 8 years of open service for us. And that those that are coming in today and get to spend their entire careers authentically, they don't have to expend all that energy protecting themselves. They don't have to expend all that energy fighting a policy that didn't want them there. So they're going to make it to where I am, and they're going to go so much further and do so much more. The other thing I love talking about is the fact that, if we have to fight a war in the future, we are going to fight and win that with brain power. And if that brain that is going to revolutionize the way we fight and win a war just happens to be in a trans body or a Latino body or a female body or any other body that is capable and wants to serve, I want them serving alongside me. I want them bringing their talents to the defense of this nation.
We have a congresswoman here who was a service member named Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, where I'm from. And I heard from somebody who lives in her district that she recently voted against, trans, rights in the military. Which was kind of stunning. Do you know anything about her?
I don't know
with her?
Congresswoman myself. No.
No. Okay. Just out of curious. Tell us about the pen. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you follow? I mean, I know this sounds silly, but do you follow politics closely?
Well, I spent a year on Capitol Hill working in Congress, so
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
it is certainly a subject that fascinates me. It affects my day-to-day life in terms of what we do in the military, because Congress holds the purse strings. They
Right.
fund what we do, and certainly with the political context that is built around trans identities. Yes, to me, staying informed is the mark of a good citizen, because if we don't know what's going on, how do we make good decisions about the future?
I love your passion. Were you always a passionate person? Like, and just that, because I'm helping raise a 15-year-old nephew, and I would love to give him a way to have passion. How do you do that?
I don't know that I always was kind of an extroverted, passionate person. In fact, I've taken, personality tests multiple times in different courses over the years, and my introversion to extroversion meter has certainly swung quite a bit as I grew into adulthood. But I think I always had some real deep-seated feelings that I really cared about. I mean, if my story of, oh my God, I want to get out into the galaxy, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be an engineer, that was something like that blazed in me, but it was quiet. It was on the inside, but I felt it deep. Now it's kind of that, look, I feel these things, I really care. And I have this ability to advocate on behalf of others. So if I'm not out there blazing a trail and passionate, why listen to me? Hopefully I'm giving off that energy that says I care and it's a good thing. It's about making lives better for others. So it lights my fire. Just as the quote said, make that torch burn a little brighter.
Just to take a side trip here, have you ever thought about becoming an astronaut?
Oh, I absolutely wanted to become an astronaut. That was my dream. And so early in my career, I applied, and one of the first and best ways for engineers to become astronauts was you need to be a flight test engineer. And I put in the paperwork, and somehow, like 6 months before I put that paperwork in, I had a cut in the back of my eye that was closed with a laser. And as they did all the medical review, they looked at it and said, if you had already been flight qualified, this isn't a big deal. But because we have enough perfect applicants, we're not willing to take the risk. So it's like, oh my God, I'm 2 years into my military career, and my dream of being an astronaut has died.
I'm sorry.
How do you recover from that? It was an early lesson for me, and I've had many such. But I stayed, and I was still passionate about space and the job we do with technology development. So there was still a path forward for me. And now I still hope to buy a ticket 10 or 15 years from now if prices come down, because I think seeing the Earth from orbit, seeing the sunrise, seeing a borderless planet, really seeing the planet as a spaceship has got to be a transformative experience. And I've talked with astronauts and understanding that, but I want to see it for myself. I want to experience that. So yeah, another topic. I'm passionate about space and space exploration and all those things. Now, I will say I probably might not have made a great astronaut, as not long after I got disqualified, we went to Balloon Fiesta in New Mexico. Big celebration. They do a bunch of balloons. And one of those devices was there that you strap yourself into, and it spins you all different ways.
Right.
And I'm like, I can do that. The Chinese food that we had eaten just before ended up many different places. And I was like, maybe that was good that they disqualified.
Well, it's amazing that your wife, for a birthday present, didn't send you to space camp. That would you could have gone on the centrifuge and all that. You could have, the vomit comet, done all of that. Yeah,
I could have vomited in all sorts of different places.
That's funny.
Have you've done the weightlessness and the zero? Have you done any of that?
I have not been on the zero G airplanes or anything.
Okay.
I think it would be fun and vomitous, but I will save up for that trip to orbit.
Okay.
You talk about other trans people in the services, and you tell me a little bit about you said that they're pilots, they're all kinds of high level jobs that I don't think the majority of Americans know this fact. I certainly was surprised when you listed all of the jobs that they were in. Tell us a little bit about it.
There is no one way to be trans. There is no one way to be trans in the military, and trans people do everything that any other person does. So in the military, we have the full breadth of experience across all services, all ranks, all jobs. So you have trans test pilots, you have trans lawyers and doctors, you have trans engineers, you have trans members of the infantry, and trans people that serve on submarines. So trans people do everything. I mean, that's the message to send of, like, pick a profession in the military or pick a profession in the civilian world. There's a trans person that wants to do that. And there are trans people that do that.
And probably better than most because they have to.
Well, we almost have to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
We do.
Because people have expectations of us in many cases that are unrealistic or incredibly low. I'll tell one story that when not long after I had come out, I had a boss that I worked for about 6 months while I was working in international affairs, and he retired. But before he left, he called me into his office and he said, "You broke my stereotype for who a trans person was just by showing up to work and doing your job every day." And I had to think, like, whoa, sir, that is a really low bar. I'm just going to hop over that one, because if that is it, like, show up, that's not too difficult. but that he was willing to admit it was great. But it also speaks to the stereotypes that are out there, that we are in some way broken or incapable, when nothing could be further from the truth. We're just a group of people reaching for our best selves. And that's the kind of thing you want in an individual. You want someone with that growth mindset, that I can be better today than I was yesterday, and I can be better tomorrow than I was today. That's what trans people are doing. We're not saying I'm broken, fix me. We're saying I know I can be better, and I'm going to do what it takes to be better.
I know for me, when I finally realized that I was trans, and when I finally came out, there was a freedom that I didn't have before, that it was self-imposed, but I just always, sort of lived in the shadows, and was afraid to show my true self, because I was afraid people would point to me and go, "See, I told you." But once I came out, boy, nothing stopped me. Nothing, nothing. There was nothing I couldn't do. And I think, you're. I'm sorry, you like that one.
Authenticity is incredible. And when we can put our full selves out into the world and have that authenticity and that joy reflected back to us, what a gift.
And for Julia, I think hers is absolutely reflected in her work, because when she was, before she transitioned, when she was doing stand-up comedy, there was a wall for her. And I think, that, when you were performing as Rick, that there was that wall of not being yourself. It was all just for show.
It was don't show too much.
Right,
don't show too much of myself, and
but
because
then
people will know.
When you transitioned, it was like, look out, because here comes this crazy old lady, and she is just coming at you, and this is who you are, and it's just been an amazing thing to watch unfold.
I have noticed, though, Bree, and maybe I don't know if you felt any of this. Election, when I talk about being trans in my act, there's a palpable level of tension that comes into the room where that wasn't there before. Do you find any of that on your job?
So it's interesting. In my job, I think the answer is no, but I have to say I'm insulated by a lot. I am insulated by the rank, because that is the first thing that people see when they see me in uniform. And I have to, put myself in their shoes. What did I think of a colonel when I was a junior officer? And I thought, whoa, that's someone. They've done some amazing things. And it was funny, because I thought in the military, it always seemed like the two ranks above you were the adults in the room. And then you make it to that rank and you're like, no, these are just a bunch of the same corny people that I am.
Yeah.
So as you go up, you keep thinking that, and then you keep reaching that. And no, we're all just trying to do our jobs. But understanding that is important for me to know, how do people feel when they see me? But because they see Colonel first, and then it takes a while to see Bree, and then it takes a while, even if they see that, do they see the trans person, or do they just see an officer doing her job and taking care of people and developing amazing technologies and figuring out what we can do? So probably not is the answer. It doesn't mean people don't go and talk about it in another room when I'm not there. But again, I think to my face, no.
Let's talk about the pens. Sure. Not the pens, the pens. The Joe Biden pen story, you open that chapter with, it's October 2024, and I'm staring at a pen on my office shelf. It's a pen President Joe Biden used his 5th day in office to sign the executive order on enabling all qualified Americans to serve their country in uniform. What? You were there when he signed it.
I was not there when he signed it. I was away at school. The military had sent me to War College to get another master's degree and a graduate certificate in leadership and ethics. So I didn't have the opportunity to be at the signing, but not long after, this pen shows up in the mail with that note saying thank you for what you've done. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And I couldn't be happier than to have that as a memento that sits on my shelf and reminds me what the power of our example can bring about.
When did he salute you, though? Then I thought that was the.
So that was at Pride later that year.
Right.
So he signed that executive order in January, and then at Pride, I was invited to the White House to the Pride ceremony there, and in the middle of it, unbeknownst to me, the president had me stand up and he saluted me, and I'm like, ah! Return that salute, and then of course I turn to my wife and I say, please tell me you got a picture of that. And she's like, no, I was too busy clapping.
Oh no!
And
there's no picture.
I think there's 1,000 cameras in this room. There's
got to be a picture.
And
there's got to be a picture.
The only thing I could get was a grainy, terrible YouTube screen capture from their live stream. And I have had friends say, I know the people at the White House Historical Office and the photo, and we'll search. Nothing. So yeah, the YouTube was all I got. But then at the end of the event, president walks out, and it's down a row between the crowd, and he turns to me and he salutes me again. After locking eyes with me, I'm like, ah! And like, you got that one right? He's like, no, but it only would have been the back of your head anyways. So
jeez Louise. Oh man. Just in that moment of time, I know you can't, when stuff like that's happening, it's like a car accident. You're not really aware of what's going on. But in the aftermath, when you thought that through that night at home, when you were in bed, what were you thinking? What did that feel like?
Like the president saluted me? That's like, what life am I living? How did I get to this point? How surreal is all of this? But upon further reflection, when I tell this story, it's not about me. I was there representing a group of people, and this gets back to the point that we made earlier about blazing trails, and also if you can see it, you can be it. So I was so thankful for being able to be in that room where someone who might be watching could say, I could do that someday. I could be in those shoes. I can see what's happened. I can see that trans people are out there being successful and doing incredible things. Maybe I can go do incredible things. And so I often give speeches and I talk in public events, and guarantee afterwards there'll be a young trans person, usually a teen, who will come up to me and say, I never thought that was possible for me. And that is the moment that melts my heart. If you can watch possibility bloom in someone's eyes, it's just the most amazing thing ever to see.
I love that phrase, watch possibility bloom in someone's eyes. I've had those moments too as a performer, where I've had people come up after the shows, and young kids too, not young kids, but teens, and just say the same thing. I see what I can do with my life. I had parents come up to me and they say, I love my son or my daughter. Just what do I do for them? And I go, just love them. Just that's all they really need from you. But when it's times like that, and I say our lives are parallel in a way because we're both public people. Of course, I think what you do is a lot more important than what I do. Maybe not. I don't know. But
yes.
You make people laugh, and that is a gift.
Sometimes she does. Sometimes.
Summer does. A few clunkers every now and then.
I mean, not as many as it used to be. But I get the same feeling from my work that I know very well what you feel about your work and how fulfilling it is, and to know that you're contributing. On the Pens chapter, I want to read this paragraph, and it's not a downer, but I guess it is kind of. You put as fond of as those memories are. You talking. There is another pen that terrifies me. That pen belongs to a future president who believes otherwise. We saw it happen before. After a year of open service by transgender troops, President Trump tweeted in 2017 that quote, the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military, claiming that the country, quote, cannot be burdened with tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. That kind of it contradicts everything you've said here this hour. And to be honest, I believe you over
Well,
him.
That's the history that we're looking at right now. It has happened once before, and it makes you wonder. It seems to be based on those same arguments that we have shown and proven with 8 years of service are not the case. We have the data, we have the experience, we have had at the time when there were only 4 services. Now there's 5. Space Force, awesome. 4 service chiefs testified to Congress that there were no issues related to transgender people serving in the military. But now, as recently as December 22nd, President-elect Trump said, with the stroke of my pen on day 1, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy, and I will sign executive orders to end child sexual mutilation and get transgender out of the military. I mean, so day 1, executive order in some way, shape, or form, likely coming to attempt to fire all of us again.
So let's put ourselves in that moment. What is the plan for you, for the other 14,999 trans folks in the services? What do you do? How do you respond? He's the commander in chief, like him or not.
Well, we had this happen before, and I go back to that day in 2017 where those tweets appeared like a lightning bolt out of the blue. What do? You lace up your boots and you go accomplish the mission that the people of the United States have given you to support and defend our Constitution, until or unless otherwise you are dragged out of the service that you care about so much. So will a tweet be in order? No. Is an executive order the policy of the United States government? Yes, it is. How that gets implemented, what the details look like in that is all still to be determined. So that remains my advice to anyone who is serving. It's lace up your boots and do the job. Give no reason for anyone to bring you out of the service other than bias or discrimination, because there should be no excuse, because you are there, you are doing your job, you are accomplishing the mission, you have the support of all the people around you. And so that's where we're going to be. No matter what we see, we're going to do our jobs to the best of our ability until we are no longer able to do so.
I think as civilians, we need to lace up our boots too and back you up. And stand up for our own rights. I feel like there's a great social movement coming that's comparable to the 60s, the whole anti-war movement back then. I feel like that's coming again in this country in the next 4 years. I just feel it in my bones.
I hope so.
Well, I don't want to end on a downer note.
See, I told you she wasn't always funny.
No. Kathy, earlier today on the phone, said when we were talking about what we were going to talk to you about, I said, what do you want to ask her? Kathy, now is your opportunity to ask.
Yeah, what are your crazy offbeat space questions, or do aliens exist and all that stuff? Where are the
tell us about can we ask you about the drones?
Yes, go ahead.
About the drones. I may not be able to either confirm nor deny anything about the drones.
What do you
You
think?
can wink or you can pull your ear or something like that.
Do you have any concerns about the drones?
So drones are so widespread and they are toys at this point. I think if you said anyone, oh my God, have you seen the drones? And then people go out and look, they're gonna see drones. So I don't have any real concerns, but I also have not spent my time drone investigator. That is not one of my hobbies. I have many, and most of them are nerdy, and I certainly enjoy all of them. But Drone investigation, not my strong suit.
So you don't walk into work on Monday morning and everybody's yapping about the drones and just like.
We do not. Our eyes are focused on horizons far above that in the space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Yeah.
What
Well,
do
let
you
the Air
feel
Force
about
deal with that?
the idea of awards being fought in space is not it's not no longer a fantasy. I mean, it's no longer science fiction stuff.
No, certainly not. And that's what's, I think, amazing about now we have this Space Force that should war extend into space and conflict already has, we are there. We are growing people from the beginning that think about that think about how do we fight and win a war in space? How do we protect and defend the assets that we have in space that truly underpin the American way of life? Because people don't realize how much they depend on space capabilities. And no one's going to call on the Army or the Navy in their daily life, but all of you talk to the Space Force every day. If you use your credit card, if you use your phone to navigate somewhere, you're talking to GPS. And that's a system that the Space Force built, designed, and operates. And it's a free service to the world. So it's really amazing how much we rely on that. And that's just one of the systems that we operate. So we're there to keep you safe, to keep our modern world functioning.
I mean, when you think about it, it would be a bloodless overthrow of our government to take out our communication system or our electrical grids, any of that. We couldn't run our computers, which are all run by satellite, aren't they? I mean, it's, we're screwed.
Well, a lot of comm does go over satellites, but the vast majority of the world's communications still do run over cables, undersea cables, fiber optics.
Really?
But yeah, it's if you want to get concerned about something, get concerned about someone cutting a fiber optic cable at the bottom of the ocean and see what that does. Now, we are a net. You have to do a lot of damage to really get after communication. But that stuff is out there. And yeah, communication is a huge aspect of what we do and the support we provide to the nation. But there are other things I think that are even more important, and how we work and how we play.
I gotta tell you, I woke up this morning, and the closer we get to January 20th, the more I have agita in Italian, it's just acid indigestion. I feel a little better having spoken to you. You've allayed some of the anxiety I've been feeling, and I know a lot of other people, straight cisgender people, have been feeling, knowing that people like you are where you are. And I am honored to have you on tonight. And I thank you so much for what you do and your strength, your courage. Thank you. Kathy,
it is my pleasure to join you. Yeah.
Will you talk to us every day? Because we need really, you're passionate and you're uplifting and you make us feel better.
I'll get to work on my 1-a-day desk calendar so you can get your daily dose of Bree. Oh, what did she say today? Ooh, that was maybe tomorrow.
What are your hobbies? Just out of curiosity, what are your hobbies? What do you do for fun?
What really recharges my batteries are mountains, whether it's hiking up them in the summer or skiing down them in the winter. It's that moment at the peak where you just take in the world and just.
So you really do have a global view of everything. I remember I got my pilot's license because I so wanted to fly when I was younger, and the first time I soloed, that moment you lift off the ground and it's just between you and the machine and the sky, and you're just up there and you can't believe that such a thing can happen. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a great feeling. God, you're like my hero.
About your escort, your little
my escort
when you were flying and you went off.
Oh, I was doing my long cross country, for my flight test, and I had to go from Jersey Shore, where I live, up to the Delaware Water Gap, and then down to Maryland, and then up the coast. That was my triangle, right? Well, I get down, like the first leg went okay, The second leg, I got lost in Maryland, and I was dangerously close to the Aberdeen Proving Ground. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I thought it was worse. I thought you were getting dangerously close to DC, which is
no. This was in the '80s. This was like before any of that happened. But I was flying VFR, and I'm looking at my map, and I'm going, "That's visual flight rules, Kathy." Well, you know that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my map, and I see the proving ground. I see the bridges in the Delaware River, and I go, "Okay, I know it's here somewhere. I got to stay out of their airspace." And I called Dover, and I said, "I think I'm lost." You don't want to admit you're lost, but it's a lot better than getting shot out by a missile. That was so I stopped flying. So I love flying, but I was a lousy pilot. I had a terrible sense of direction.
She liked the idea of piloting. She just
I love piloting. I love flying. Loved everything about it except the navigating part. I sucked at that. So you don't want to go fly with. Do you have a pilot's license, by the way?
I do not. I actually, like we learned with the spinning machine, I also do terribly in small planes. However, maybe if I was at the controls, just like people who drive don't have issues.
Yeah.
Maybe if I did go fly, I would be okay. But I'm a bad passenger.
I get car sick if I'm not driving, so it's the same thing. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, we got to wrap up, but I got to tell you, we've done. I think this is our 35th show. This has been for me. This is one I won't soon forget. I thank our mutual friend who brought us together. It was Brody that brought us together.
Oh, Brody. We love Brody.
Yeah, and I wish you all the best. I hope this next 4 years you can't ever, it all works out. So all I can do is, I'm here if you ever need me. If you feel like you want to just bitch and moan and scream and call me, feel free.
I might have a few of those days where, and hopefully I'll at that time have the chance to do it from the top of a mountain.
Oh.
And I'm going to say thank you, Colonel Bree Fram, for just being you and doing the amazing things you do. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
See you later.
See you later. Yeah, we do. Oh, Jimmy said we have to do a hard out.
Yeah,
so I guess we're doing a hard out. So